Wasdeo,
Oseo,
Sun's mantra. Viraya Saradaya, Upanistada, Va Viryatya, Va Tataram, Vabati. Current of sun's energy comes through to its perfection. Paranata. The sun as a transmitter, Wohashahi, is transmitting from the stars. Most First Nations here, we believe we are actually star people. And the sun transmits wisdom, knowledge, information. People would have collective relationship with the sun. I had earlier mentioned the Coronado assault on the Pueblo of Zuni in the 16th century was on a summer solstice. And at that time, the Pueblo were totally engaged in ritual dances and everything in order to implore the sun to remain up there as long as you can and don't go back north because we have crops we need to have your sunshine. The upshot of that is that in Native America the sun has a choice and how that's conveyed or reflected into our societies. Meaning the sun could choose to do otherwise than what we wish the sun to do. All this personifies the sun. Also as individuals to relate to the sun, I do every morning, the sun is reciprocal. And it's also a reciprocal way to enlightenment. And so the personal relationship with the sun continues, among people, certainly here in Native America and in Mexico, as far as I know of it. So that's my theme here. And the ancient people that we know a lot about, apparently, are the ancient Egyptians. And the Egyptian had a really thorough culture of the sun. And the integral for that sun culture is this falcon being called Horus. Horus is the Greek name for Hris. Hris, both that he flies high and he's the face of the sky. And that he's the soul, he's the moral soul of Egypt. Recently, the Egyptian revolution, very recent one, that disposed the president, Mubarak, he was an Arab. And President Obama at the time, definitely applauded the Egyptian people for disposing him and driving him out, towards the east. This is a very, very ancient legend of Horus in combat with Set, who more or less been figured, at least legendarily, as the shepherd kings, meaning people who had come from the eastern desert and came to dominate the Egyptian people for a couple hundred years before the Egyptians drove them out. Well, Horus is that. He's the moral force of the Egyptian people, and still is, evidently. So that gives an idea of this. In my illustration here, this is actually, I've replicated, this is a cartouche from ancient Egypt. And here, this is Horus in this figure, and here he's raising the sun as Amun-Re. The sun is figured in so many, many ways, throughout the culture, and this is one way that it is figured. So this is Horus raising the sun as Amun-Re. Here, this is usually called the Egypt. This is the eye of Horus. And Horus is also the protector, so he protects the Egyptian people. Very similar to it is the Celtic, Eye of Bel. And that's also a different figure, but just to say there's a relation of this eye of Horus. Now, the people in the Southwest, and principally I'm speaking right now, the people who we call the Hopi, their ancestors come from that culture. Actually, their ancestors come from the eastern delta. That's where the Nile is, in the eastern delta, overlooking the Sinai. And there's a turquoise mine there, hence the interest in the Hopi with turquoise. Also, you've heard the DNA everybody has. Well, there's also the chromosome factor. And in the chromosome factor, that the Hopi of that place bear what they call the black factor. And the other black factor is from southern India, and both of those are found here. And Claudia's parents, here went to the Museum of Man, and at the time they had like a diorama of a Hopi room with, mannequins like that. And her mother looks at those Hopi mannequins and said, "They look black to me." So that's an affirmation there. Here, I've replicated this. This is called a dance board. And there would be a handle on the bottom of it. And what this is, or who this is Horus. I'm saying the Hopi people have come from the eastern delta of Egypt, and they have brought with them Horus. Now, Horus on the Nile is a composite of 3 falcons. You kind of put them together whenever you see a life-size look of the bird, like that. Here, that got transferred to the American kestrel, also popularly called the sparrowhawk. And chiefly because this bird has these marks on his cheek that customarily we call warrior marks. And they're very prolific in the Southwest, and there are many petroglyphs also in the Southwest that actually depict this. In this case, this is meant to be the hawk or the falcon, and this large area that he has here, kind of like he's wearing, is called a moisture board. And this moisture board means that he's going to fly up to the sun to entreat the sun to bring rain. These are farmers, to bring rain. Also, if he was a dancer, impersonator, this is a picture, but similarly there's a dancer. He has a kind of like a bamboo pyramid like on his head. It has a tuft of red hair, and these feathers, these are actually the kestrel feathers coming off of it. So everything that's kind of simulated in this portrait, as it is to give the sense that this is a bird-like being. Again, it corresponds to the sun. And again, these people have translated Horus of the Nile to the kestrel of America. And then I should say, down here I have a replica of a maca. In ancient Mexico, that's like the Mayans, they reckon that there is either a son of an earlier age or an earlier son in an earlier age. And he's figured as the maca, usually Gutzamats is his name. And he was disposed by a new age, mythically. But people who are shamans and people like that, and like Don Juan, continue, in whatever relation or conference with the maca as the principle of the earlier, at least if not original, sun. So all this is to speak of people's relationship with the sun. Now here I have one more. Now this is a portrait of what we call Ogma. Now this is Celtic, Irish, Scottish, Celtic. And this image right here comes from eastern California. It's figured in an area east of Ridgecrest. It's called Little Petroglyph Canyon. You can take tours there. And this image is about 4 or 5 feet high, on the rock. Very, very, very clear, very legible. And it is entirely in Gaelic. And it figures, Ogma is what we call him. His name is actually Ogma Macran. Gran, or Graner, is the sun, and she's female. And she is the mother. Og means the offspring. Mak means the son. He is the son of his mother, Gran. And he is the principal inventor, I guess I'd call it, of the method of writing in Celtic languages called ogam or oyam, like that, which is not phonetic. It's made by strokes, so many strokes, per letter, kind of like that. And the way, legendarily, that he created that was by looking into the face of Gran. So here, his face, he's also called Sunny Face. So here in his head, like I say, he's looking in her face, and that he saw her eyelashes. So these are her eyelashes. It's from that he devised this system of writing called Oga. Further, his body is a brushwood gate. And the top register, like zigzags. It means, I'm a gate and I open. Here, his elbow is very sharp, Yilin, meaning all. And he carries this staff or this rod. This is Shinmaku. Shinmaku is the white rod for transforming, almost like Don Quixote's helmet of Mabrino. It transforms whoever wears it. So his rod is like that, is saying, this is all transforming. And over here, the telltale is these 3 horizontal strokes, which is his name, using the consonant letters of G and M for Oga. And his elbow would mean all-knowing. This is all about knowledge. His father is the Dagda, the chief of all Druids. And our friend and former mentor and everything here, Shawnee Carlisle, was the incident of the Dagda appearing among us, who takes the spores from everybody here and takes them back to the tour when we go to the underworld where we will be born again. And at the bottom of his body, he's wearing a fringe kilt. This is Uyir, meaning the east, and then he has 3 toes to say he's a borderline character. He's appearing there as in the twilight. Now this is, an ancient Celtic piece that I'm going to read, and this is also for the upcoming autumn equinox, and it's titled Rain. Roads not yet glistening, rain slight. Broken clouds darken after thinning away. Where they drip, purple clouds blacken, and beyond, white birds blaze in flight. Sounds of cold river rain grown familiar. Autumn sun casts moist shadows. My brushwood gate out to dry at the village mill. Hulled grain half wet and fragrant. That's the slight PS in there. The sun is grain, and it is cognate with grain. In the ancient time, the sun is actually seen made of segments. The Spanish country in Spain called Granada for pomegranate. The word is also used for apple, but pomegranate because the ancient view of the sun was full of seeds or full of grain, like granite. So that's part of the play on the word, of hulled grain, half wet and fragrant is her.
Thank you.
Gracias.